Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming to our exhibition at the Waterman's Hall, home of the watermen and lightermen. If you've looked round the exhibition, you'll see these wonderful, amazing things that have been found by the mudlarks on the banks of the River Thames, and hopefully you'll have a chance to look round the building as well, because it's an amazing building, built in 1780. And I don't know if you know notice the ceiling next door. It was actually done by Josiah Wedgwood. Imagine getting your mate Josiah around to plaster your ceiling. I can just imagine him up there on a ladder with a trowel. There's a lot of people here I know, and I'm really humbled because they're my peers. But there is also a lot of people here that I've never met before. What I'd like to do today is to talk to you about London's history and take you on a journey by using the things that I found on the Thames foreshore as a mudlark. What I like to do is to hand artefacts out. There will be pictures on the screen, but I'd like to walk among you and just hand things out. So what I'd like to do is to tell you a bit more about Small Change in Muddy Waters. I didn't make up that title. I done a talk last year at the Big Smoke in Soho. It's a variety show, and it's run by the wonderful Kevin Bennett. And he came up with a title, and I think it's quite apt because it explains what we do. We find small change in the muddy waters at the banks of the River Thames. Please check out the Big Smoke variety show. It's well worth going to. I was performing there with a harpist and a bloke reading Greek mythology. It's quite an amazing night, and a strange one. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Sean Clark. I am a licensed River Thames mudlark. I found mudlarking about 4.5 years ago when my beautiful wife Trudy passed away, and it has actually changed my life. I say licensed because you need a licence or a permit to be able to scour the banks of the River Thames and remove anything from the shore. What we're looking for is things that have been lost or thrown away over the last 2,000 years. And there's quite a lot of history to be found there. I'll let you into a secret. Mudlarks don't tell people where their best patches are. But I'm looking around this room today, and apart from Stuart, I think you're all trustworthy people. I only go to one place. Everything I've ever found on the foreshore has been found in one place, and that's on the north bank of the River Thames, between Blackfriars and the Tower of London. But really, that's where London began. That's where 2,000 years of habitation has been. My licence allows me to hunt between the Thames Barrier in the east and Teddington in the west. That's a lot of foreshore to be hunting. So what we're looking for is things that are eroding out the shore or get washed in. So you often see me walking, if you walk over the Millennium Bridge, I'm walking up and down the shoreline, or moreover, I'm crawling, because most of the things I find are really, really small. Our finds get recorded by the Museum of London. We have our own finds liaison officer, Stuart Wyatt, and we have, if lucky, a couple of appointments a year, and we take our treasures to Stuart. He takes them and keeps them for about a year, so it's like losing your children. And then they get recorded and they go on the Portable Antiquities Scheme database forever. Now, as a mudlarking community, if you've been around here today, you'll know that we're a wonderful community and we all get on. That is unless you get to someone's favourite patch before they do. I'm really sorry, Caroline, I won't do it again, okay? No, seriously, we have fun mudlarking, and even in the summer sometimes. We finish a lark with champagne and strawberries. It's an amazing thing. So what sort of things do I like finding? Well, I like finding dice. And these are dice are trade beads. are trade beads. They're beautiful. It's taken me 4.5 years to find 13 of these small little beads, all in the same patch. Emma has found about 5, again, all in the same patch. I didn't know I'd like beads when I started mudlarking. I'm frightened to tell my mates at West Ham I like beads, because I know they'll give me a right-hander. So these beads may have been made in Hammersmith on the estate of Sir Nicholas Crisp. Nicholas Crisp was making beads between 1635 and 1640 on the banks of the Thames. He was part of the Guinea Company. He was using beads to trade. They've been found all around the west coast of Africa and in mobile communities in America. Nicholas Crisp had to leave the country because he was a royalist. He did come back after the Restoration, and when he died, for some strange reason, they took his heart out and they put it in a box with a bust of Charles I on it. And every year on the anniversary of his death, they used to take the heart out and pour red wine over it. I don't know why, but in the end they reunited his heart with the rest of his body. Anyone who knows me will know I like finding these things. These small little cubes are made of bone, and they're absolutely beautiful. Roman, medieval, post-medieval, and people ask me, why are they so small? Well, in some places and times, gambling was illegal. After the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, it was law for every man and boy of a certain age to practice archery. But in 1541, they worked out that no one was practicing archery anymore. So they brought in a gaming act and they banned the playing of cards and dice. So that's probably one of the reasons why they are so small. One of the other things I like finding are medieval pilgrim badges. And this little beauty I found a month or 2 ago, and it's Mary holding the baby Jesus. Someone said Mary looks like Marty Feldman, and only someone of a certain age would know that. So you would have worn that on your pilgrimage, and sometimes it was customary to throw the badge in the Thames once you've ended your pilgrimage. Very recently, I found another pilgrim badge. It's a badge mount, and it's in the shape of a scallop shell. And if any of you are religious, you'll know that it represents St. James. Where I found it, not even a stone's throw away, there's a church. And as you walk in that church, there's a scallop shell. And when you walk in that church, there's scallop shells everywhere. St. James garlic hive. In medieval times, the Spanish used to bring garlic to London. They would dock at Queen Hive, and they adopted this church, St. James's, as their church in London. But then they would take the pilgrims back to northern Spain to a place called Ferrol, and then they would walk what they called the Camino de Ingles. They would walk from Ferrol to Santiago de Compostela, where the body of James is resting. Now, we've got a mudlark friend, her name is Millie. And Millie was born in a place called Santiago de Compostela, and her mum still lives there. And she took the badge on a journey, and she took it to Santiago, and she took it through the Pilgrim's Way again, taking photos and documenting her journey. She's going to be here tomorrow, and she's done a storyboard of her journey, and she will have the badge on her table. But when she got to the cathedral, we arranged to get it blessed again for the second time probably in 700 years. The only thing I said to Millie is, when you bring it back to London, don't throw it back in the Thames. Please give it to me. So coins, I like coins. And I found this beautiful coin the other day. There was 3 of us there. One of us was going to get it. Sorry, Emma and Ange. It was on Valentine's Day, and I say it's a present to me from my late wife. It is the most exquisite Elizabeth I silver shilling. The detail is amazing. The mint mark tells me that it was made in 1582. So let's put this into perspective. When that was made, no one in England was smoking tobacco. More importantly, no one had chips or mash. The potato hadn't arrived. And Queen Elizabeth hadn't even thought about the Armada, so it's a very, very special coin. But the thing I like finding the most are these wonderful time capsules. They're 17th century trade tokens, and I'm going to talk to you a bit more about them a little later. So small change in muddy water. I want to talk to you a bit about small change in England through the years. So this is a wonderful coin. There's something different about it. It's a Richard I penny, or it was. Someone walked into a shop in 1189 with a penny. They brought something for half-pence. So to give them their change, they've cut it in half. Because the value of the coin was the value of the metal. And they also quartered them as well to make them into farthings. Another coin here, quite nice. It started life as a Charles I shilling, 12 pence. It's a sixpence now. But if you look round the edge, there's no what we call legend, there's no writing. That's because it's been clipped. Someone's been nicking silver off it. They used to nibble around the edges for bits of silver and must have got enough melted down. Now that was punishable by fines or even execution in the worst cases. If you was a man, you got hung, drawn and quartered. You as women got off lightly. You were just burnt at the stake. So the small change, there wasn't ever enough of it. So traders used to make lead tokens, and they're really quite basic and crude, with some weird patterns on them, and they would use them as small change farthings. But you could only really use them with the trader that issued it to you. Very recently, another Mudlark, Fran, she actually found part of a mould for a lead token. And you can see the token we're holding out. They just poured the molten lead into this mould. And now Jason Sandy's got a mould as well, found back on the banks of the River Thames. This is a beautiful coin. It's Henry VIII. You can see his beard, you can see it's late in his reign. So during Henry's reign, there's something called the Great Debasement. We were skint as a country. Good job we didn't have to pay divorce settlements back then. And what he was doing, he was adding more copper to silver coins. They should be 92.5% silver, 925, the standard. Towards the end of his reign, the majority of the silver coins were basically copper with a little coating of silver. So if anyone received a silver coin, the first thing they do is look at the nose area and rub it, because that used to wear off first. And if you saw copper, you wouldn't accept it, you gave it back. He got the nickname Old Copper Nose for that reason, for his debasing coins. Elizabeth I, now she considered making copper coins. This is a penny of Elizabeth I, looking resplendent again. But it never happened. Copper coins never came into being. It wasn't until James I came to the throne that copper coins come into being. So what happened? Lord Harrington had been looking after Princess Charlotte for years and years and years, and he hadn't been given any money for it. So he said to James, "Come on, mate, give us some money. I've had her in my house for years." And James is skint as well. All these royals are. So what he said, "I'll tell you what we'll do, I'll give you the patent to make copper farthings. We'll go 50-50 on the profits." They've done some projections, And James worked out it was going to be worth a lot of money. So he changed it to 60-40. These coins are tiny, absolutely tiny, but they are really, really, really beautiful. You can see the size of it. It's known as the Harrington farthing after the Lord who had the contract. So from £1 in weight of copper, you could make 24 shillings and threepence worth of these copper little farthings. That's 1,164 coins. It was money for old rope, or should we say, money for old copper. So Harrington died in 1614, and the patent went to Lord Lennox. Lord Lennox was the next one who had the patent. Charles comes to the throne, there's 3 more farthings. Richmond, again, he had the patent. Then Lord Maltravers, and they worked out everyone was forging these little coins. So in 1636, they started making the beautiful rose farthing, and I think all us mudlarks like finding these little beautiful coins. They've got a beautiful rose on them, and they're quite a special coin because they have a little brass wedge in them. That basically was our country's first bimetallic coin. It was to stop forgeries. And pretty much it did stop forgeries, because not many forgeries have been found of this coin. They were made between 1636 and 1644. Everything changes. 1649. England changes forever. Charles walks down Whitehall to banqueting hall. Allegedly climbs out a window onto a scaffolding. That's it. Regicide. We're a republic. We are a commonwealth. Oliver Cromwell. This is a Commonwealth coin. I think one thing you'll notice on it, there's no king's head, because obviously the king didn't have one. But there was no more king's prerogative for making coins. You weren't going to get executed if you made coins. Cromwell started making silver coins like this, but in no great amounts. So again, there's no small change, and the traders saying, what are we going to do? There was a talk in Parliament, and the minutes were a discussion about small monies for the poorer type. The poorer type. People who just want to trade. Then you had the engravers at the Tower Mint. When Charles was alive, they were really busy. He loved the coin made with his image on it. You had all these skilled engravers, virtually redundant. And then the magic happened. The magic that is trade tokens. Technically, it was illegal money made out of necessity. But they were made by the people, and they speak of the people. There's no names of kings or lords, and they are the most beautifulest thing you have ever seen. So how did it work? Well, over 90% of the dies for these tokens in the first 15, 16 years were made at the Tower Mint by these skilled engravers. And that's why the tokens are so beautifully made. They're very small copper coins. Then the coins and the tokeners would travel street to street, road to road, village to village, town to town, selling the concept of trade tokens. And if you've ever seen a double glazing salesman, you get a gist how it went. And I think this is how it went. Good morning, sir. I see you are a candle maker. And must I say, your candles are the best that I've ever seen. The quality is undeniable. I'm here to solve a problem that I know you have. I know you have a lack of small change. But we are going to solve that for you today. Because we're going to make a token, a coin. You can have a farthing, you can have a halfpenny. And it's going to talk of you. It's going to talk of you, not kings. And in the middle of that token, it's going to have an image. And that image is going to tell people your sign outside your business, or it's going to tell people what your trade is. And on the back of that token, it's going to have the street where you're trading. You are going to be in the pockets of everybody in the local area. They will know where to come and buy their candles. Basically, it's probably the world's first copper business card. And they were absolutely beautiful. But we're going to do something else for you. For every 20 shillings worth you buy, we're going to give you a shilling's worth free. So there was an incentive to buy it. Now, I've just been down Jason Sandy's candle shop. He's bought £150 worth. How many do you want? He's going to be in the pockets of everyone in that area. £200 worth. Done deal, mate. So, take the money, back to the tower, the dies are done, the coiners give the tokens, they're trading, they're using these coins and giving out a small change. Let me show you some tokens because they're absolutely beautifully stunning. There's two tokens. Well, this is one token front and back. As you can see, there's a person in a rowing boat. So it was a water woman. It's a woman trader. And out of the 15,000 tokens made over a 20-odd year period, only 3% were women traders. Her name was Elizabeth Smith, and she was trading in Ye Upper Ground, which is by the Oxo Tower. So she was ferrying people to and fro up and down the river. It's dated 1659. And she was a very strong lady indeed. I've got another one here which is quite special for where we are today. It's got the coat of arms of the waterman and lighterman. He was a waterman, and his name was Richard Broughton. And he was in Putney in 1668. This one's a Hughes halfpenny, Elizabeth's one was a farthing, and that's a general make-up of coins. If you've ever been to Putney and you get off of the boat at the pier and walk up the Salt Road, it's called Waterman's Green, and I am quite sure that's where he would have been based. So the halfpennies would be his halfpenny for a man, her halfpenny for a woman. And the other day I was flicking through something and I see a token, because I find tokens, but if they're interesting I will buy them. And I saw this. Their halfpenny. And the initials of the traders, so it's William and Mary Sanders in Witney, Oxfordshire. There is a love knot there with their initials in. They must have been really in love as well as in business. And a little look about them, I think they were fullers, they was in the wool trade. So they're absolutely amazing. I want to go back to these two, because I do a bit of research on this and see if I can dig things up. Well, Elizabeth Smith, I had a look on Google and there was 32,600,000, and I thought, I'll go back to that another time. But I found a document for Richard Broughton, and I'm not going to put all documents on screen today, but I do have all the documents here. If you wanted to come and see them after the talk, you're more than welcome. And I found his marriage certificate. And he got married in 1674. And he married someone called Elizabeth Smith. And they got married in a place called Horsley Down, which was Horsley Down, and it's in Southwark, by where Tower Bridge is today. And it clearly says Waterman of Putney. So it's him. I've got to do some more digging, and then my brain had this vision of Richard rowing up the Thames, looking all windswept and exotic, and she was rowing past him and their eyes met, and that was it. Love on the river. Okay. Two tokens. The first token I ever found, Michael Parks at Shaddle Dock, and he's got a wonderful Noah's Ark and a dove from above on it. So I looked into Michael. He was married twice, his first wife died, he remarried Mary Mays. And then I found the certificate or the registration of the birth of their son in 1659. And at the end of the record, it gave his trade. He said chandler. So there's different types of chandlers. Candlemaker, a tallow chandler. You have ship's chandlers, and he's at the dock, and I needed to find something to confirm it. And then I was looking at the coat of arms of the Worshipful Company of Shipwrights, and right at the top of it, there's a Noah's Ark and a dove. So he was a shipwright, trading out of Shadwell Dock. Then you've got Luke Ivory, Brentford, and believe it or not, that image is a man making candles, pulling them out of the mould. Luke was a bit of a scallywag, born in 1603, to nobility. But because he weren't first in line, he never got the title. He got called a cousining line knave in 1655. I like to look up what a cousin was. It's basically obtaining money or property by deceit. And he got off with it. Two beautiful tokens, quite related. So you've got the Bullhead Tavern, Cheapside, 1650. Thomas Benson was the landlord, and Pepys used to visit the pub, but he never called it the Bullhead, he called it Benson's. Then you've got the Star Tavern in Cheapside, 1648. And I thought about it, hold on a minute, Charles died in 49. Tokens didn't start until he died. And then it came to me. New Year's Day was Lady Day, the 25th of March. So he died and got beheaded actually in 1648. Everything fell into place. The Star Tavern, famous pub on Cheapside. In 1660, General Monk marched down Cheapside with his army, triumphantly to restore the Restoration. Crowds and throngs of people cheering them on. So him and his generals, they stop at the Bullhead Tavern for a beer and some lunch. Over the road in the Star Tavern is Samuel Pepys, watching it and writing about it. Just a couple of beautiful tokens that I really, really love, especially Emma's one with the house. John Twizzleton in the Strand, a small house. We think it relates to something that was called the Canary House or the Yellow House. Basically, it was a bloke's drinking club. And then you've got the Man in the Moon in Wapping, and I know that Jason actually has this token as well. A lovely, lovely tavern. Two more to show you. The Dog Tavern. Who don't like a dog? And a beautiful mermaid. What I'm going to do now is introduce you to some traders. Here's a token. It's got a wonderful maiden with her attributes showing, and she's got a crown. It's a bit worn. And the picture actually represents the coat of arms of the Worshipful Company of Mercers. And it's called At Ye Maidenhead. And you've obviously noticed on the back of the token, it says in Pudding Lane. Might have heard of it. It's just down there. It's dated 1657. The initials on the token give us a clue to the name. A is the surname, B is his first name, W is her first name. So his name was Brian Appleby. And there's a contention over his wife's name. There is a document that names her as Winifred, which I've never heard of. But there are documents calling her Winifred. And he was a vintner. And his business was in Pudding Lane. He had the contract to sell wine for communion at St George's Church, which was at the top of Pudding Lane. And actually in those church records, there's a receipt in the accounts that says, "Et at Appleby's." And they had one Westphalia gammon. Westphalia's in Germany. And the pigs were fed on acorns, and the taste is meant to be delicious. So it was high quality. And obviously, they was importing gammon to London in that time. They also had 3 pullets, and a pullet is a chicken under 1 year old. So it was a right feast at Appleby's. But how big was the Maidenhead Tavern. We got no photos, but we have got something else. We got the half tax or fireplace tax returns, and they used to do it on New Year's Day, Lady Day, 25th of March. And over a period of a few weeks, they would visit every property in London, and you had to pay 2 shillings a year for every fireplace you had in your property. So how many did Brian Appleby have? Should we have a look? There he is. The biggest property on the east side of Pudding Lane. He's on the east side, he's on this side of Pudding Lane. 13 fireplaces. 2 shillings. It would have been a warren of small meeting rooms. So what about the baker, Thomas Farriner? And I'm sure he knew Brian Appleby and supplied him bread. How many fireplaces did Brian Appleby have? Well, firstly, he didn't live in Pudding Lane. He lived in Fish Yard. Fish Yard was a small courtyard off of Pudding Lane. And he had 5 fireplaces and 1 oven. 1 oven! And he couldn't put that out properly. London burns to the ground. The Maidenhead Tavern would have been one of the first buildings to get it. Gone. 87 churches. 13,200 properties. And if you look at that map there, you can see the scale of the destruction of the city. London's in turmoil. Loads of grand plans come out, and then someone with a brain says, hold on a minute, we ain't got the money, we ain't got the materials, and we ain't got the tradesmen. And it weren't until the early part of 1667 that things started getting into motion. Naturally, the first thing, clear the rubble, stake out all the new streets. They wanted to widen the roads, and there were compulsory purchase orders of land so they could do that. They also told you what building materials you could use as well, so it wouldn't happen again. Naturally, roads and bigger buildings got priority, but then they looked at the actual people that are the heart of any city. So what they said is, if you want to rebuild your property, you have to register your intent. You have to pay 6 shillings and 8pence, and that will pay for the survey. Once you've registered, an appointment would be made. They would literally come back to your ruined building, and they would stake it out, the square footage, and they would write it down. This is a little map, a wonky graph, sorry. So you can see, they started doing this in May 67, and you can see the peaks and the troughs. Now the peaks is because people were registering to rebuild, because winter was over, and that gave them all those months to rebuild before the winter. So out of the 13,200 properties that burned to the ground, just over 8,000 put their intent in to rebuild. Brian Appleby, believe it or not, was one of the first people in London to register his intent. He registered on the 21st of May 1667. But that doesn't mean he was going to rebuild it. A lot of people just didn't bother. What do you think? Do you reckon he rebuilt it? Yeah? Yeah, he did. There's another trade token. The Maiden looks in a bit better condition. And it's the Maidenhead Tavern in Pudding Lane. It's a halfpenny. It's got the same initials. So we know it's him. But more importantly, it's dated 1668. He was trading again on that site 2 years after the Great Fire of London. So it's a story of regeneration, and it's Pudding Lane just round the corner. I've got another little token I want to talk to you about now, but it's one that I haven't got here. I've done some work for the Worshipful Company of Tallow Chandlers, looking at their collection of trade tokens. They have 105 tokens, 105 time capsules, and they're all candle makers. So I catalogued them and tried to research them, and there was one that really interested me. It's a later token, 1669, so they got away from the old way of doing it. There was all weird designs going on tokens then. So his name was Francis Dove, tallow chandler in Whitecross Street, 1669. And he was single because there's no wife's initial on it. So I went looking in the archives, Metropolitan Archives and Guildhall Library, seeing what I can dig up on this man. And then I found a wedding certificate. And he married Mary in 1684. And what I noticed, it was a Quaker wedding. He was a Quaker. And Quakers were really persecuted in the country at that time. William Penn actually got land off of Charles, and he set up what's known as Pennsylvania with all the land he set up in all little plots for persecuted people of Europe, Germans, Dutch, English. There's a book called The Suffering of People Called Quakers, and Francis Dove appears in that quite a few times. He was imprisoned for his faith. He was fined for his faith. They took property off him for his faith. And when he weren't making candles or in prison himself, he was always going to the prison, making sure the other Quakers were fed and watered and writing their stories. So he died in 1705. And I got a copy of his will. And I was reading it, and something stood out to me and I couldn't work it out. He said, I bequeath to my son Robert all my lands in the province of, and I couldn't read it. So I sent it to a lady that transcribes all my documents for me for a small fee. And when it come back, I nearly dropped me coffee. It said Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. He's a Quaker. He bought land in Pennsylvania. And then I found another document. This is the outside of the letter. It says Francis Dove and all, London, 1687. And it's to James Harrison in Bucks. So where's Bucks then?
Buckinghamshire.
Good guess, but no. It's Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So Harrison was Penn's right-hand man. He used to take care of business when Penn was in England. And it was his job to divide up the land. And the letter is absolutely fabulous. And the transcription just reads, it's quite personal. How's your wife doing? You know, everything okay out there? And then it talks about the land. Basically, he's buying 860 acres of land in the New World. That's quite a big area. £180. 180 quid. That's amazing. And he's going to send over his son Robert with a 60 quid deposit, as you do. But he says, I don't really trust the guy we're dealing with. Can you make sure that when Robert gets out there, there's weaknesses in that room? Because we don't trust him and we don't want him to stitch us up. So that's the transcript. But what I like about it is this bit here. Direct thy letter to my house, next door to the Coach and Horses in Martin Lane, Tallow Chandler, near Northumberland House, near Charing Cross. And I bet that letter got there. So the letter itself has 3 names on the right. Francis Dove, William Wiggin, Edward Samways. Dove, Wiggin, Samways. Remember those names. Again, I was doing digging. I found a map early in the morning for mudlarking. I thought, oh, I'll have another coffee, and then I'll sit down and have a look at it. Not that one, it ain't. There it is. So at the top right, you've got the street plan of Philadelphia, which you can see plotted down there. You can see Bucks County written. You can see all the lands. You can see here the German township. You can see the Dutch township. All persecuted people bought land in America. And a lot of those townships are probably still there today. So I thought, oh, I've got to find them. And I sat down with my coffee Whether it's beginner's luck or not, I ain't got a clue. I found it straight away. Oh, I don't believe that. What I want you to look at is the T of Bucks County. I can't really read it. Just to the left, there's three names. Dove, Wiggins, Samways. That's the land they bought for 180 quid. And I think today it's in an area known as Trenton, probably worth millions of pounds. So I did contact the Historical Society out there and said, do you have got any information for me? And they wanted to charge me, but the amount of money they wanted to charge me, I ain't paying that. So I will do it another time. Again, that trade token led me to finding a story of persecution and then a new beginning in the new world. I've got another trader I want to talk to you about, and I really want to dedicate this story to Stuart Mudlark, because I know he loves it. Stuart had to exhibit with me all through last summer, and he did say, if I hear that story one more time. But I love the story.
Wouldn't be Abraham Brown by any chance?
Stuart! Yeah, let me tell you about Abraham. I've got a token here, I'll hand it out. I should have handed out some more coins. So, what we got is a token, and the trader's name is Abraham Brown, and you've got a bear with a chain. It's his halfpenny, so we know it's half pence. And where did he trade? It says Bridgefoot, Southwark. And it's not a trick question. Where was Bridgefoot? The foot of the bridge, well done. It was a medieval tavern, and today on the site of the Bear Tavern at Bridgefoot there is a pub, and it's called the Mudlark. Okay, how apt's that? So the pub was a medieval tavern. The earliest record is about 1300, but it's where it was. It was strategically very, very important. It was really the first building you came to when you left the city via the bridge. It was a coaching point to take you to Kent and Surrey. But more importantly, next to the Bear Tavern was the stairs, and they were called Pepper Alley Stairs. And those stairs were the last stairs before you had to shoot the bridge, go through the arches on a boat. And people didn't like doing that, because if you've ever seen the river go in and out, it moves pretty fast. And on the old bridge there was 20 arches. So that area became like whitewater rapids, so boats would capsize and everything. So people would get off at Pepper Alley Stairs. Famously, Cardinal Wolsey was going from Hampton Court to Greenwich to give a sermon. He refused to shoot the bridge. He got off at Queenhive Dock, took carriage to Billingsgate Dock and continued on his journey. In 1633 there was a decree to board up every single back door of every tavern in London, but the only one they left open was the Bear Tavern at Bridgefoot. That's how important it was. Samuel Pepys once spent the night drinking in the tavern, leaving it, merry, because he was never drunk, and whilst walking over the bridge, his foot fell down a hole in the dilapidated bridge. He thought he broke his leg. But there was a constable there who helped him get out of the hole, and he hobbled back to Seething Lane to eat his Parmesan cheese and drink his wine. So what about Abraham Brown, the trader? Well, Abraham never started life there. He originally started life at the White Horse Tavern in Lombard Street with his wife Penelope. They took over the pub in 1642. They had 5 children, and poor Penelope died in childbirth in 1652. She was buried at St Mary Warnoff's Church, which is at the end of Lombard Street. Abraham remarried, and he remarried a young lady who was considerably younger than him. How do we know this? Our friend Samuel Pepys. His entry for April 1666 says, "Tonight I visited the White Horse Tavern in Lombard Street, and the mistress of the house was there. I have heard so much about her. She is the most beautifulest woman I have ever seen. Yet her husband, Abraham Brown, is so old and simple looking." And that's come from Pepys himself. So you get a picture of an old man with a beautiful, beautiful young girl. I want to read you an extract from Pepys' diary. I only wrote it down last night, right, so I haven't learned it. So this is September 1665. And it says, "I away back again to the Bear at the bridge foot," so he's going back to the Bear, "being full of wind and out of order. And there called for a biscuit and pieces of cheese, a gill of sack, gill's wine. Being forced to walk over the bridge towards the change." This is the line. "And the plague being all thereabouts in London." I want you to hear two names. You're probably never going to hear them again. Thomas Day and Mary Hart. They were servants for Abraham Brown at the White Horse Tavern. And in September 65, they died of the plague. So how big was the White Horse Tavern? We have no pictures, but we have got the half-tax returns. Abraham Brown's tavern had 18 fireplaces. That's massive. 2 shillings a year. His poor young wife. They had 2 children together, looking after 7 kids, no more servants, cleaning 18 fireplaces. The pub burns to the ground in the Great Fire. He takes over the Bear at Bridgefoot, that famous tavern. He issues his token and trades. Then tragedy strikes. February 1667. Samuel Pepys writes, "Tonight I took water, and my waterman told me that the mistress of the Bear Tavern did throw herself from a window and drown in the river. This saddens me, because she was the most beautifulest woman I have ever seen. And she was the mistress of the White Horse Tavern in Lombard Street. I've not found any death record for her, and I think because it was a suicide, she would have just ended up in Crossbones graveyard if they'd found the body." So Abraham died in 1672, and he was buried in St Mary Warnoff's church with his first wife Penelope. So I've got a little quiz for you to finish with. I don't know how I'm doing at the time, but there you go. Oh,
Yeah, you're good.
that's the wrong one. You all know who this woman is, but you don't know who this woman is. Shall I explain? So her name was Frances Stuart, and she was in the court of Charles II. And he wanted to make her one of his lovers. She didn't want to know nothing whatsoever about it. Weren't interested. So she arranged to meet her boyfriend, Lord Richmond, at the Bear Tavern at Bridgefoot. They had a meal, they had a drink. Got a coin from Abraham Brown. And then they took carriage to deepest, darkest Kent. They got married, never to be seen in the court again. That's not true. She caught smallpox a few years later, so he welcomed her back to the court. The reason you'll know this woman is because Charles wanted her so much. He made her the muse for Britannia that you see on the back of coins. How great's that? Okay. before I let you all go and release you, I just want to like to do one more thing. I would be grateful if the master of the guild could come forward. Ted? I would like to present your guild with this trade token for Richard Broughton of Putney, which clearly has your coat of arms on. He was a waterman. I know you lost all your records in the fire. I'm quite sure he would have been part of this guild. I hope you enjoy it. Please give me back your coins. If you've got any questions, please ask. No.
It's not so much a question, but boxing today, you've got a set of rules called the Queensbury rules. Before that, you had the London Firing rules. Before that, you had Broughton rules. And on the way to the toilet,
There is a picture of Broughton. That's correct.
and he won the dog in the bag.
He did do indeed.
75, he was a waterman. So there might be some connection with him and
Okay. I did look into that a bit. So there was about 100 years later, and I've yet to find the connection.
Yeah.
They're both watermen, and there is a very good chance that they were related. Definitely. Good question.
On the trade tokens, who was responsible for the artwork? Did they have to give the artwork to people that made it, or did the
basically,
people
what
was there
happened-
like a design agency that would make them for them, or did they?
So all these engravers at Tower Mint, initially they'd come up with a design. So the candle maker, the man pulling candles, if the tokeners went back and said, oh, he's a candle maker, they'd go, okay, it's that. So virtually the tokens for each trade were the same. So you could have the coat of arms for the guild, if you wanted, or, so if you was a candle maker, you could either have the coat of arms for the candle makers, 3 doves, or you could have a man pulling candles. And likewise with the others, there would be maybe 1 or 2 things. I can see that the old tokeners go around with 2 cards and say, well, sir, you can have that, or you can have that. So they're pretty standard.
So they weren't the bespoke design, and you couldn't come up with your own bespoke design for your.
Those things went on later, yeah. They, like Francis Dove, it just had his name on it.
Yeah.
Or the one with their halfpenny, with the love knot and things like that. That was more personal to that trader. Where else before, when they was all starting, you know, it was, oh no, that's it, that's what gear.
I was just going to ask, how many tokens have you actually found, and
Okay.
how many have you bought?
Okay, that is a very good question. I have found 12, and I've probably bought about 15. If there's a story there,
Yeah.
like when that there halfpenny, I see that, I thought I have never ever seen it.
No.
And I just really, I want to get it because it tells a story.
Yeah.
But I've done my beautiful token map here, and I'm going to redo it again, which I've got the Atlas map
Wow.
of London,
Wow.
and I've put 44 trade tokens around the map. A lot of these have been found by other mudlarks in this room,
Yeah.
and eventually I want to do it again, all mudlark tokens. And I've plotted on the map where they would have lived and traded. More importantly, if you look at this bit in the middle, and then look at that map, overnight, their homes and livelihoods gone.
Yeah.
So trade tokens are
Very
amazing.
interesting.
They cover the Civil War, they cover the plague, the fire, the Restoration. And not many people know about them, but they are just beautiful.
And quite, I was just going to say, they're quite small, because you think as a token, you're looking for something, you know, like coin
Well,
size.
the value of the coin is the value of the metal. There's no intrinsic value. And when they outlawed them, and that coin with Britannia on it was the first coin they made, Charles II, which spelt the end of trade tokens. And he made a proclamation saying that the tokeners and moneyers are defrauding the people because the coins have no intrinsic value. But a few years later, because our tin mine was in decline, he started making coins out of tin. Don't have any intrinsic value. So 15,000 time capsules and stories to follow.
So what happened when they kind of decommissioned the trade tokens and let's say you had some trade tokens? Tough luck.
It was a month. He done the decree on the 16th of August, 1672, and he said by the 6th, I'm going to outlaw them on the 16th of September. That's it. So if he spent all his money on his copper, it's only worth the value of the copper, which is nothing because they were small.
How often do they investigate?
Whoever finds them, I like doing it. Sometimes I spend time up there and I find nothing about the traders. It's just at the luck of of what you find. But a lot of these traders had money, so a lot of them would have made wills, and a lot of the wills from that period are still around.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think foreshore has spoken for long enough.